Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into the show. I got a good one for you here today, guys. All right, the 2022 season for fantasy is officially over. So we're going to be looking ahead to the 2023 season, and I've got a list here of things that we need to keep in mind when approaching our draft in 2023 because based on what happened this year, fantasy football changed a lot, okay? It's a different game now than it's been in the past. So I've got a list here of things that we need to keep in mind when approaching our draft in the 2023 season. So I'm going to start right here with the first thing on my list, and that is please highly consider taking a wide receiver in round one. Now, guys like Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, Jamar Chase, these guys have made it to where the wide receiver position pretty much has a higher ceiling on a weekly basis than the running back position because a lot of these wide receivers are getting targeted 11, 12, 13 times a game. There's literally receivers in the league that averaged over 11 targets a game this year. This is absolutely ridiculous. There's weeks where they come out and get 15 targets. Either way, the target share for wide receivers is way up. So for PPR formats especially, I really want you guys to consider taking a wide receiver in round one. Guys like Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, Stephon Diggs, they're all great options with the first overall pick, and they're going to win you leagues. So make sure to not be afraid to take a wide receiver with the first overall pick in fantasy next year. There's a few running backs I recommend taking in the first round as well, but this is going to be the first season that we've seen in forever and where there's probably more wide receivers that are going to be taken in round one than running backs that are going to be taken in round one. So the dynamic of fantasy football has changed a lot, so we need to keep this in mind. Take a wide receiver with your first pick and do it without hesitation. Next on my list is I want you guys to reach for a handful of players that I have here. And I talked about a lot of these guys last offseason. They were late round picks, and a lot of them ended up breaking out. But Ramondre Stevenson, Tony Pollard, Calvin Ridley, Kenneth Walker, and George Pickens. These five guys, I really think that they're going to break out and have a massive season in 2023. And so I want you guys to consider reaching for them. Now, some of these guys, their ADP is already, pretty high. They're, either a late second round pick or an early third round pick. Some of these guys are being taken in the sixth or seventh round. Either way, I think that they're all going to smash their ADP from where they're currently at. Now, obviously, we're a long way away from the season, and their ADP can change tremendously between now and the time the season starts. But where they're being taken right now, looking at it from a very early perspective, all of these guys are going to smash their ADP from where they're currently at. So reach for these five guys. Next on my list is I want you guys to avoid players coming back from major injuries. Now, we see this all the time. Players like, for example, Saquon Barkley 2 years ago that are coming back from major injuries that take a long time to heal. They're not really back to full strength, full capacity until 2 seasons after their major injury. Saquon finally had his breakout year again this year. He had a great season. It was good to see. And this was because he was 2 years removed from his major injury. Last year, he was still playing timid. He was afraid to make jump cuts and everything like that. Not to mention he was running behind the worst offensive line as well. But the fact of the matter is, when players have major injuries, especially to their knee, it usually takes them 2 years to really be the best version of themselves again on the field. So, guys like Breece Hall and Javonte Williams, I know how tempting it is to draft these two guys, but considering the fact that it almost always takes 2 years for players to recover from injuries like this, I think it might be a best idea to fade them at their current ADP unless they slip significantly, and they're probably not going to because their ADP is going to be high because of the name. There's a lot of hype around the players, and the players are very good, and they were doing well before they went down with their injuries, but I would wait until 2024 to draft these guys because they're probably not going to be 100% next season. Next on my list is I want you guys to make sure to stack these quarterbacks and wide receivers. Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. Deshaun Watson and Amari Cooper. Now, in the past, quarterback wide receiver stacks haven't been as prevalent as they are now because the wide receiver position gives you a higher weekly ceiling than it ever has, and quarterbacks are being taken earlier and earlier in draft because quarterbacks are actually much bigger difference-making players in fantasy now due to their rushing upside. Now, we know that Deshaun Watson has rushing upside. We know that Josh Allen has rushing upside. Joe Burrow has some rushing upside, and he just has tremendously high weekly potential because of all the offensive firepower on the Bengals and because of his ridiculous talent level. So I would try to stack up these wide receiver stacks, these three I just mentioned, because I think that they're going to be league-winning wide receiver quarterback stacks. And if you're able to take these guys early in the draft and stack up these quarterback wide receiver combinations, I think they could be league-winning picks for you. Next and final thing on my list is I want you guys to make sure to pay attention to the later rounds. Every single year, People are so excited about who they're going to take early in the draft. But what really separates the great fantasy players from the just okay fantasy players are the late round picks. I mean, last year we had Ramondre Stevenson, Tony Pollard, DeAndre Hopkins, Christian Watson, Chris Olave, Kenneth Walker, Dameon Pierce. These are all guys that got taken between picks like 90 and 140 in the draft. And they end up being league-winning players. So every single year, there's at least a dozen, if not more players that get taken after pick number 90 in the draft. They end up winning leagues. So make sure to pay attention to the late-round sleepers, the late-round potential breakout players, and make sure to spend more time researching the later rounds than the earlier rounds, because everybody knows who to take with the early picks. It's pretty much common information by the time the draft starts, but the late round steals are what's really going to win you leagues. So make sure to pay attention to those late round picks. These guys can end up being league winners for you guys. All right, guys, appreciate you tuning into the video. I will catch you later.